Hey everybody, welcome back to Salt Goblin channel. Welcome to the tribe. If you're not part of the tribe already, you can subscribe. I also stream on Twitch every Thursday at 8 Eastern time. It's good fun, mostly video games. Today we're gonna do a blind react to the brand new video by the Command Zone, the Unwritten Rules of Commander, the Command Zone 597. So they've done a few videos like this where they talk about unwritten rules of Commander, like Rule 0 and like don't be an asshole and don't blow up lands and stuff like that. Not always popular with the community. So let's see what they have to say this time.
So I came from a playgroup that was really casual. Our playgroup really liked Dovescape. A lot of people played Dovescape in
What's Dovescape? Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, counter that spell. That player creates X 1/1 white and blue bird creature tokens with flying, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. I'm gonna add that to my shopping list. $2 US card.
multiple decks we had Dovescape.
An enchantment that sticks around that says counter that spell.
Counter that spell. But we thought it was so funny.
It is funny.
It's birds now.
Because
Pops into birds.
you were like, all right, I guess we're all playing birds now. And you just make birds. And we were happy to do that. And then I brought Dovescape to a game store when I moved to Los Angeles. And boy, did they not want to play against Dovescape. They were like, do you have a plan for Dovescape? And I was like, other than playing it? No.
How long is it's an hour and a half? I can't do a react to this. Okay, we'll have to edit.
You have entered the command zone.
Oh fuck, I thought it was 20 minutes.
I'm your host, Rachel Weeks, and we have two very special guests. You know them, you love them. It's the boys.
The boys. It's me, Murph, and
as always, me, Jake. To our folks listening in the car.
All right, let's just jump ahead a bit.
You can't see me. All right,
Link is in the description if you want to watch the whole video.
let's get into the main topic. No more ado. Today we're talking about the unwritten rules of Commander. Some say that Commander's greatest trait is its flexibility, right? Its general appeal. It's permissive and it's open-ended, and it gives the players a chance to sculpt the kind of play experience that they want to have. And as a result, Commander is full of house rules and personal preferences and power discrepancies because different people like to play different ways. And while that is Commander's greatest strength, it is also Commander's, strongest sticking point because there's a lot of blurry lines that can lead to power imbalances and preference clashes.
That's a very good point. And so far I've been in two play groups where people were arguing a lot about cards allowed, styles of play, to the point where it made a rift between friends. I try to take myself out of these situations, out of these play groups if I can every time, or at least keep a neutral ground. Basically now what I decided is, what I told myself is, and I tell other people is just, it's legal, right? It's the cards. The cards have been printed. As long as you play the cards correctly, looking at you, Wish, I think it's that red card, Wish, then there's no problem with me. Now, if you have a super fucking, well, they'll probably talk about it later, but if you have a super fucking oppressive deck, like a super stacks deck, that for me, when you stop other people for playing, like Turgrid, with the implication that we're all gonna sack and you're gonna take our shit, or we're all going to discard and you're going to take our shit, that for me is not fun. I don't really want to play with that. I'll try to play against it once, maybe in the evening, but it's not something I want to do repeatedly. That, and if you have unlimited combos level at like turn 2, 3, or even 5, for me that's too fast, and I don't really enjoy that win con of breaking the game through math and interactions. But some people do like that, and maybe as long as people know ahead that this is what you want to do, and then they'll take out their decks accordingly.
Especially when you're playing with strangers.
yeah, that's perhaps the biggest problem just overall with Commander is that everybody has something that they want to do, some preconceived notion, some expectation that they bring to the table, and trying to match all of that up together is difficult.
And I think we're all three very different people, and that's part of why this is a 3-person podcast right now.
Yeah.
Is I like to think that I come from, the beer and pretzels type of Commander, or the, you guys are so in it with, your decks are up to date. You know what I mean? But I feel like I'm a little bit more in Murph's, side-eyeing right now. Maybe his decks ain't that up
No,
to date.
not that. I'm just like, I'm trying to think, are my decks up to date? I'm like, I really should go to cardkingdom.com/command
Hey,
and get some stuff.
that calls back to what we said before.
Yeah.
That's perfect. No, I think that we have different opinions on things, and some places we're gonna sync up, and we're all it's gonna be like we're talking about unwritten axioms, and then at some points it'll be, well, I don't really feel that way, and I think it's important to know that this is a safe environment to speak our minds. We're all pretty good friends. We know each other for a really long time.
Yeah, it's like more blurry lines a little bit here today. And also another caveat is that these rules, we don't all believe every single one of these unwritten rules, but they are all at least reasonably commonly held rules, or something that we've at least heard of before in playgroups or play.
So, the first
chapter.
rule we're going
Mass land destruction.
to talk about, I put rule in quotes here, is don't play mass land destruction. Never play mass land destruction in Commander.
We're Commander players.
We were talking about that last Sunday. That card came up.
Commander players do not like people touching their lands.
We're very sensitive about our lands.
Yeah, you can run.
It's because you fall behind and you can't play anymore. If you can't play anymore, what's the point?
Like a Ghost Quarter or a Strip Mine to take care of that Gaia's Cradle or a problematic land. But if you're doing mass land destruction, blow up all the lands, that's a big no-no for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, like in 1v1, mass land destruction is a strategy used to lock up a game. When you're ahead, you slam, you blow up an Armageddon, you blow up all the lands, and now you hold your position. In Commander, mass land destruction can be applied that way, but I've certainly played against decks where it's mass land destruction is the theme.
Yeah.
Which is, we're Commander players, we build very thematically. We like a deck to have like an idea, like a thesis.
Yeah.
A point.
And mass land destruction is a terrible thesis.
No. Like, if you know that this unwritten rule kind of exists and you choose to do it, then you're trying to get a certain reaction. Like, I think one of the things we should talk about really early on in this show is it's all about, what are you trying to do? What feelings are you trying to give your group? What do you want to put out there? If you want to antagonize everybody, or if you want to be more pub stompy in an environment that isn't expecting it, this is a great way to do that. It's great.
And a lot of people will say, like, oh, if you don't like mass land destruction so much, why isn't it on the ban list? Why don't you ban mass land destruction?
You know what? That's a good point. Let's just ban Armageddon. Good idea, Rachel.
I'm calling the Rules Committee.
What about Cat?
Hello, Rules Committee?
I looked it up, and there are 49 legal cards in Commander that blow up all the lands. So if we ban mass land destruction in Commander, we would suddenly...
All right, we don't need to hear more for that point about getting the reaction. That's funny because that's exactly what happened in that first group I was telling you that had the rift, where one guy destroyed like one basic land of a guy, and he got angry and he's like, hey, please don't play destroy lands in our pod. And the guy was like, why? Like, it's legal, it's just one land. You're gonna have like 10 or 12 by the end of the game. And it ended there. And then the next game he played Armageddon against the same guy. That guy got up from the table. We were in a cafe that, like, not a magic store, at a cafe. And he just got up and screamed and called that guy an F word to his face. And I was like, oh, okay. And then was like, I ask you to not play land destruction, and the next game you play Armageddon, what's the deal? And he was like, well, I've always played that card with my friends, there was never a problem. It's like, yeah, but I asked you. And he's like, well, I never agreed to not playing that. Like, can I tell you what not to play? And then it evolved, and that guy that got up angrily, this happened a lot, where he asked that we not play Cyclonic Rift, and then 2 or 3 other players accepted. Then the people that were trying to come into our pod and play with us did not like that attitude that someone decided what was getting played at the table. Well, that person stopped playing Magic eventually. Mass discard. If you played one Armageddon in a game, I think it would be funny for me personally, but if you played a mass destruction land theme, I'm trying not to scoop as much as I used to these days, concede. But I would probably concede at the second one and be like, okay, you win. I don't want to play like this. Unless they beg me to stick around if somebody says they have a plan. But I would probably be skulking in a corner. Sometimes I can't help it. Mass discard.
So the next rule that we're going to talk about is similar. It has a similar sort of feel bad and a similar sort of hatred in Commander. And it's don't play mass discard. Mm-hmm. Don't strip people of their hands. This includes doing like a Narset wheel thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's do not deprive the table of their options.
I'm okay with wheel.
Yeah, it's not a very yes and maneuver.
Yeah.
I will say I have more of a problem with this than mass land destruction.
Yes.
It's weird. I was thinking about this before we started, and what ends up happening with mass land destruction versus mass discard is mass land destruction, it basically gives you mana screw, whereas mass discard basically gives you mana flood, where you just don't have anything to do with your mana.
That's a good way to put it.
No matter what. So usually mana flood is... Actually, I don't know if that's true, if mana flood or mana screw is particularly better, but... I personally have less of a hard time if I'm mana flooded, because then I'm like, if I rip something off the top, at least I can play it.
Do I want my foot on the gas or do I want my foot on the wheel?
Exactly. But when it comes to Commander with this mass land destruction versus mass discard, I very much agree with you, whereas mass discard just feels a little bit worse. And I'm not entirely sure why.
I think it's because Commander is about game actions. Mm-hmm. And when you do not have, like, when you're having the most fun in Commander is when you're doing the most.
Yeah.
So when you deprive all of your opponents, and often yourself, of the opportunity to do anything more than just draw a card and hope it's a spell, that you're taking away their ability to participate in the game.
Exactly.
Where if you blow up all their lands... They can still hit land drops. They can still cast spells in their hand. They can still be flexible. They might still have rocks on the board. There's still options. And most of the time, when all the lands are blown up, the game's over. If they strip your hand, they haven't furthered the game at all. They haven't put themselves in a more of a position to win. They've just prevented you from playing.
It's a lot more like suffocation rather than a big blow to your plan.
Yeah.
I played a discard deck once. It was not even a discard deck. It was that Viashino, the trash burner guy that gives mana, but he had a hidden discard theme inside. I was trying to hit that rat that flips from the old Kamigawa set, because I was trying to do a lot of ping, little trigger damage. The way that this card works is if an opponent has no card in hand at some point, it flips around. And so I targeted a guy that had the least cards in hand and made him discard like 3 cards in the next 2 turns. And that person was very rarely salty, but that time I could tell he was not enjoying that. And I was like, that felt bad. I'm not going to do it again. So I took that combo out of the deck. It's a legit way to win, but it's not fun. Maybe at more competitive pods, or like when you hit that time of the night where you're like, okay, guys, let's play nasty. Monopolize the chess clock.
Oh. All right. This next one sort of rhymes with the other 2 that we've mentioned before, but it's don't monopolize the chess clock. And what that means is just take up way more time than your opponents do. So mass discard can kind of rhyme with that, because it's usually I'll keep my hand, you guys lose yours.
Somebody said, why hasn't anybody built Tom Bombadil yet? And I said, for me, I don't like that deck. And then the third grid guy said, oh, you just hate every deck? I said, no, I hate decks that stop me from playing third grid. And I hate decks that take way too long and are super oppressive, and the turns are so fucking long. And Tom Bombadil turns are so fucking long.
But it's also... Like in 1v1, there's
legal.
guardrails for this, right? There's judges, you can call them for like slow play, or there's just chess clocks generally in MTGO. You're limited in time.
I'm not saying taking time to think about your turn. Like if Magic is super complex, you can absolutely take some time to think about your turn. One time I was playing this Is It deck where I was trying to copy a big X spell and take everyone out. That was my playstyle. It was a super fun deck. I should rebuild it. And I had 3 win cons in my hands. I had the doubling cube, and it was so complex. I couldn't figure out how to win. And after like 4 minutes of thinking, I said, guys, I think I can win, but I'm too bad at math. Here's my hand. And I revealed it, and they all went like, Jesus. And then they helped me. calculate how to beat them. And that was fun and funny. I think if you take 10 minutes to think about your turn and then you do backseas and all that, I think you should practice your decks at home a bit to cut the time down. Taking a long time to play your turn is not illegal, but it can be annoying.
Commander, there's no guardrails. So when your turn gets longer and longer and longer, and you're making 3 times the number of people wait, it becomes more and more and more frustrating to play against.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of strategies that do this, that like create an engine and sort of dirtle. This also applies to an extra turns deck.
Mm-hmm. Like, at least if you feign a sense of urgency, or if it's clear that you have a plan, or like, oh, I can't find the one card that I'm tutoring for, rather than, what does this card do again? Okay, I'm between these 5 cards as I'm tutoring. Like, dude, you got to pick something. You have to make a choice that is not optimal right now, because this is my time.
That is exactly what I want to talk about, because I do think this is a huge difference between competitive play and commander play. Is commander players make suboptimal decisions all the time to conserve time.
Oh yeah,
like we fetch on our opponent's turns. We will tutor and pass the turn. And the next player will start while the tutoring is happening, which obviously gives the tutoring player more information, but it conserves time for everybody at the table.
Yeah.
We a lot of the time, if you've got a complicated sequence, you just start. You're like, I don't know, I'll cast this and just see how the turn happens.
Yeah, and if you're like, oh wait, I think I did that wrong. Can I back up a couple steps? People are usually like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. And it's those kind of things obviously don't mean you don't play as precisely, but they save the table.
Depends who's at your table, because I've had a lot of no backseat is too bad, because they knew they were going to take a hit and they're being a bit maybe not sportsmanlike.
Full time, and they mean that people aren't just sitting there watching you fetch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for us, like, what makes our show so hard.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch everything. I think by fair use anyways, I shouldn't. In America, the legally defined definition of fair use of, like, for YouTube videos and React videos is you shouldn't share the 100% of the video. So link in the description again, you can watch the whole thing. We're just going to skip ahead so I can give my takes a bit and see a bit skimming, slowing the game down.
Yeah. The interesting thing about these 3 rules that we discussed, no mass land destruction, no mass discard, don't monopolize the chess clock, is I think they all can sort of be rolled up into one thing, where we're like, we don't necessarily believe no mass land destruction. We probably believe no mass discard. And we understand that the chess clock is kind of a vibes thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what they can all sort of be synthesized into is commander players do not like actions that just slow the game down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That only drag things out, because commander games are long. There's 4 people dedicating their time to this.
Yeah.
And if you can make game actions that don't further your position in the game and just make things slower, that's where the majority of commander players can get very frustrated.
Yeah. Honestly, even if you are progressing your game, even if it's just incrementally, then there can definitely still be that, well, I am sitting here doing absolutely nothing, and that is not fun. Like you were saying, a lot of people will say, hey, this is the 1 or 2 few games that I can play. Like if you've ever been to a Magic convention, you kind of go into it expecting, I'm going to play like 10, 15 games of Commander.
This is interesting, because we were talking about this the other day. Commander players in a week will play like 3 games.
Yeah.
Maybe. And we play a lot.
Yeah, I think if you have an office full of people.
For me, that's like I'm lucky if I get 3 games a month. Conceding. Interesting. So yeah, slowing the game down, I was just saying with this Atraxa Super Friends deck or like energy decks that take so long. I mean, if you're doing things and you're thinking, you're taking a moment and things are happening, it's usually not that frustrating. But when you're just like, I'm going to bounce this, I'm going to get 1 more mana, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to... yeah, that's not a good point because stuff is still happening. Skip to the next point.
We're going to have to burn these after. I promised a rule that contradicts everything we've been talking about before, where we're like consciously trying not to extend the game of Commander. But I've also heard the rule that we just don't concede. Commander players don't concede ever.
Yeah.
Especially compared to 1v1 players, where you're like, when you've lost the edge and you do not think you will recover, you're like, yeah, I'm done. I
Extend
can
the hand.
Yeah.
Thank you. I kept doing that in Standard on Arena, and my friends were like, stop conceding. I want to do my thing. It's boring. And I was like, well, I won. I don't want to sit here 10 minutes letting you beat me. Let's play another game. I mean, you won. I concede. I can't do anything else.
Totally fine.
Conceding, I love conceding for the benefit of others. I'll tell a story about...
That's something that I feel it shouldn't be done. And that was another discussion we had last week with my play group. I was lucky enough to host 2 pods at my place the other day. And one guy wanted to concede, and they were like, no, because it influences the game. And he was like, yeah, but I can't do anything ever. And they're like, yeah, but can you wait and see? Especially if we had a 4-player game and a 3-player game, and in the 3-player game could never build a board just because the other person was running another fucking commander that benefits when you sack. So he couldn't play anything. So he wanted to concede, but the other guy was like, if you concede, I will not be able to win. So can you wait and I'll try to take him out? So he sat there hoping the other person would be taken out. But yeah, conceding out of salt, I've tried not to do it. I usually concede when my deck can't do anything and I'm being suppressed and I can't do anything anymore. I used to concede more, and it was mostly because I played at a LGS that the meta was that a lot. It happened a lot that my decks were not as strong as the other people's or as controlling, and if I felt like I couldn't build anything and there was absolutely no way for me to win and I couldn't play anything, then I would concede. And it annoyed another guy so much that I remember at one point I was not winning, I was just building my board comfortably. And he played one of his chess pieces, and then I took it. I controlled it. Like, you gain control of target permanent. And he looked me in the eyes and he was like, if you take that, I will concede. Like, very intimidating, serious, very not enjoyable look on his face. And I was like, okay. And I just cast it and I took it. And he was like, ice scoop. And he took it. And he went to another table. And I thought it was so lame, considering that person was the one giving me shit every time I wanted to concede when he was being super oppressive. It felt totally like a revenge stuff more than fair play. So we have to keep into account emotions, right? We're human. I thought it was hilarious. I didn't laugh in his face, but I thought it was hilarious, and I didn't feel bad about them scooping at all. I thought it was a bit salty. But considering I used to be a very salty player, maybe 3-4 years ago, I couldn't judge him on that. I personally, I used to do that mostly because I would end up getting so frustrated, and I felt like being out of the game was better than me being there fuming or like being on my phone instead. And if I'm not contributing anything to a table, like if I'm just being suppressed or overpowered at every turn, I'd rather concede and go play at another table at an LGS, right? If it's just the 4 of us at a kitchen table, then I'll sit through it because there's no point in just me removing myself and then watching them play. But if there's other pods, absolutely, I think it's fair to take yourself out. Now, he's saying conceding to give someone else advantage. I think that's a bit lame.
Chicago. Okay. There is this awesome kid who I get to play with every single time, and he was really excited. He wanted to go meet his buddies and stuff, and we're there with his dad, and and I had been there playing a long time. My back was killing me and all this stuff, but it really didn't hurt that he wanted to get up and go meet this creator who was about to leave or something like that. And I was like, guys, I think I gotta go. I don't think I can finish this game. This is my favorite concession ever.
Yeah.
And that vibe is probably like on the higher end of the spectrum, but it is a spectrum. On the lower end too, like if this is miserable, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What are we trying to get out of this?
I think that's a fascinating thing because I do think Commander players...
Well, that's not really what he said though earlier about giving an advantage.
expect a full arc. Like, I have a game from when I was
Did I imagine
new in
that?
Commander where I was playing an underpowered deck against a mono blue Chain Veil Teferi deck.
What?
Yeah.
For each planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyal abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyal abilities.
Yep. And I know now
Great
that
pod.
was completely insane. But at the time, I was like, I didn't know. And at one point, he goes, I make infinite mana and I draw my whole deck. And I go, how do we die, though?
Yeah.
I
love that.
I wanted to die. I wasn't dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, sure.
But I'm still alive.
But like, how do you
win?
How are you winning right now?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to know how the game ended.
Yep.
Because if you just do all that, then it's like, I'm still at 40. I've got like some stuff going on.
Come at me.
And then he was like, all right, I capsize all of your permanents. I take infinite turns. And I kill you with a Muldrifter. And I was like, what a horrible story
Can we play it out?
for this game. Yeah. And I was like, I guess you have me. I remember
technically.
being like I didn't want to just be like, all right, I guess we're done and scoop it up.
Yeah.
Because I'm used to playing board games where you play until you win. And
Okay, good point. Winning out of nowhere.
we're going to get to the summary of all of these rules in a second. So the next one is one you hear all the time, and it's don't win out of nowhere. No infinite combos, or don't or like no Torment of Hailfires, or no
Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Ooh, that's mean. I'm gonna put that in my Mono Black X deck. $21. I'm US. I'm not putting that in my deck.
what's the word? The spell expropriates, where if you
Jake.
resolve one spell.
Starting with you, each player votes for time or money. I love vote cards for my Kindred deck. For each time vote, okay. Take an extra turn after this one. For each money vote, choose a permanent owned by the voter and gain control of it. Exile expropriate.
If you resolve one spell, the game was over, right?
My games are never over with expropriate because I'm too bad of a player.
See, it's really funny because Jake plays expropriate, but doesn't play any Torment of Hailfire effects, and I don't think ever would. I play Torment of Hailfire effects, but don't play expropriate, and I don't think I ever would, which is bizarre to me.
Okay, well, the deck that expropriate
play
is
neither.
in.
I don't play either of those things.
You
context
guys
first.
need to be putting some respect on my name here because the only
Please.
deck that plays expropriate, well, I guess 11 does.
Yeah.
But it's
Two decks with it. What do you mean?
easy, Merv. It's Myra the Magnificent is where I casually will play that card because you tuck that under something and you get multiple expropriates in a turn.
I was gonna read
like
Mira.
okay, like
I was gonna read Mirror, but there's so much text. I hate the new fucking Magic cards with so much text.
you're probably going to go off and do the thing and have the carnival explosion that you need to.
Okay. Fast mana. Winning out of nowhere for me is okay because that's fair. You've snuck a win in. I don't know what's the problem with that. Why would you have to telegraph your win con?
So winning out of nowhere, that's a big one that's been talked about a lot. The next rule is interesting because I do think it goes in this same sort of category. It's fast mana is not casual. Except Soul Ring. And if you're a 1v1 player, you're like, what?
What, the most busted and powerful mana rock in the game, probably, or one of top.
Well, those cards are legal and you're not playing them. I think it's the mindset of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
And so this is a very interesting thing. I think the difference with Soul Ring is, of course, accessibility.
Yeah.
Everybody has access to Soul Ring, so Soul Ring's fine.
It's $1 too.
But if you start talking about Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus and
Yeah.
even Mana Vault, I think is treated this way, even though I don't think
It's pretty reasonable
us would be
nowadays.
like really surprised to see a Mana Vault. Those are the kind of cards that if they see play at a progressive table, at an accumulating resources table, people will be surprised
Yes.
because they live in a more competitive space. And I think it's because they interrupt this thing that we've been talking about a lot. They interrupt the game narrative where they give you the gasoline for your fire, right?
I don't mind fast mana, but like these cards, I think Mana Crypt is like, these cards are like hundreds of dollars. So when someone plays that, well, first of all, if it's a proxy, it's like, fuck you, don't proxy a fucking huge advantage unless you tell us, and then we can proxy better cards too. 1, 2, that's like a pay to win card to me, where it's just like, I have more money than you, therefore I win. If there's other ways to gain faster mana, I mean, it's super important in Commander, but usually what I notice is when people have way more mana and start to cast way more spells, the other table, sorry, the other table will turn on them. So I'm usually starting to be nervous, but then I'll watch what other people do. Maybe do a little bit of politicking to try to keep things under control. So for me, fast mana is not a big problem. Understanding the game narrative.
But it can be a very good indicator of that.
Yeah. And I think that we can move right on to the next rule, which sort of combines the we don't concede, we don't win out of nowhere, and casual players don't play fast mana, is this game narrative that we've been talking about, where it's like when I sit down for a commander, like a casual commander game, you sort of expect that we're all going to sort of walk along the path and we're going to run into a problem and we're going to solve it. And then there's a new problem. It's like King of the Hill, where everybody gets to be on top of the hill at some point. And then somebody just ends up on top. And that's
Giggity.
sort of what a good game like a good casual game sounds like to me, is everybody participated, everybody got to accumulate their thing, and then the game, somebody won, and it doesn't really matter who.
Yeah, I think, Jake, we are in a very unique position because what we do for a job is try to make an entertaining game of Commander with a narrative.
Yeah, how do you have 4 protagonists in any story?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And in the game nights that we put out, well, sometimes not everybody does the thing. Sometimes one person gets out ahead and they stay ahead and it is what it is. But oftentimes the best ones, the ones that are always the fan favorites that are, oh man, this was my favorite because X, Y, and Z happened, is because there was at least some sort of back and forth.
Yeah, there was an episode that we worked on where we're like, man, this game really just ends with nothing.
Yeah.
So a whole bunch of stuff happens and then it's over. And we reviewed this together. We said, this isn't working. What can we do? And we found what the story was, which was this person handles everything. This person waits for exactly the right moment, acts, and solves the problem.
Yeah.
And we highlight their genius rather than focusing on the other person who's just popping off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we were like agonizing over this. And then,
The best thing in the world happened.
yeah, you can tell, Jake.
So the comments did this too, but Jacob Bertrand comes over and he's like, oh, wow, yeah, guys, I just watched the new Game Nights and this game was amazing. And he basically read off word for word the thesis we came up with.
Yeah. And we were like,
What game was this? They're going to be curious.
I've been cryptic about it because I want you to watch every episode of Game Nights. But
Well, at least tell them what episode it is to watch.
well, I'll give you 2 seconds if you want to pause it and figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
Okay. It was Commander Legends Baldur's Gate.
yeah.
And this was the game where Josh was going on and on and on. And we've seen people on Reddit talk about it, like, the editors were so bored with what Josh was doing that they skipped ahead. But what we're doing is by the time you're thinking, oh, man, Josh is just doing the same thing. Oh, it's so boring. We're acknowledging, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
That is what's happening.
And then we'll move on from that point. We'll use that as a springboard to whatever the next point.
And we especially highlighted Lexi's genius of choosing exactly the right moment because that's what that narrative needed to be for, that's exactly what happened.
And that's a great story to tell.
Right,
It's like
quiet, and then bam.
And I think we think about this a lot because we're content creators, so we know what kind of game makes the best content, makes the most exciting content. But I think when you're playing Commander, you want exactly the same thing that you want from stuff you view. Like the best games that I've come out of would make the best televised games.
Yeah.
Because they're the most exciting, where this person had it, then this person had it, then this one. I couldn't believe you had that. Because if you had that...
a reason behind
Denying commanders. The next point.
the madness. We promise, modern players.
All right, we're going to continue on to the next rule, which is don't deny your opponents their commanders. I think these next few rules are the ones that we disagree with the most. So we can talk about them that way. But
Yeah, let's be clear. We're not saying these are the rules.
Yeah.
No.
These are the rules as we've observed them out in the wild.
these are some rules that I have, some suggestions.
I will tell you right now, I disagree with basically every single one of these from here on out.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be an interesting thing because this may not be like we have... you need to adjust to these beliefs.
Yeah.
But this is about recognizing that these beliefs exist so you're not blindsided when somebody gets upset that this happens. But what we're doing is just shining light on things that Commander players have expressed rather than saying this is correct and you need to behave accordingly.
Yeah, like I hate being on Twitter and seeing Commander players be like, "Don't touch my stuff," or just whatever. Like, it's not like that, but you have to understand where they're coming from.
Yes.
Yeah, there are some Commander players who do get very upset when you counter their commander or when you remove their commander.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be, like, I've even heard it. I think this is a rule that is expected. And when you counter someone's commander, you keep in mind, if you're in like a stranger setting, that this is a reaction that could come out. So you can prepare for it or you can adjust to it. Not necessarily that you don't counter their commander, that you just understand that people don't like it.
Yeah.
There might be a spectrum here of get good noob all the way to I cannot believe you countered my commander. Dude, what do you how rude.
Yeah.
Like, you're not even going to let me play this game. You counter my commander. You Darksteel Mutation my commander. What the hell? And in the middle, I'm here saying, you got to be a little tough. Okay? Like, that stuff is going to happen and you have to decide how you're going to react to it.
Yeah, and I think this applies.
That's a good point. Commanders are very strong. I think it's up to you to protect it. Like, going back to my friend wanting to play Turgrid, he purchased a Turgrid, he's building the deck, and another guy said, "Oh, it's fine, he'll never see the board. Wink." And another guy was like, "Well, I have counter spells and hexproof, like, that's I know how to build a deck." I remember when I bought EC, when it was brand new, that Serpent, that with the extra draw, again with that guy that played Atraxa Super Friends, that scoop when I took his thing. Every time I cast AC, he would kill her. And the third time he killed her, I was like, man, come on. It's like, can I play my deck? And I got salty again. I was fairly new to Commander. And it was like, no, because she's too strong to be on the board. And another guy that was at another pod turned around and was like, yeah, I agree. And I was so defeated because I was like, yeah, but the deck is about her. And I think I won that game because I managed to cast her a fourth time and then just fucking my deck snowballed. But I took her apart after that just because it felt like people were not enjoying. I think I played against one AC and I was like, I understand. It's very, very strong. But my point that night was that was our third game. I didn't win the first two, and I am allowed to win two. Like, I don't know. It's maybe, how can I say this? But if I'm winning the whole night, and I've done this, if I'm winning the whole night, that last game, I'm gonna play softer and let other people have fun. Like, that happened actually at a friend's birthday where we were playing all day. And I lost the first two games. We tried Oathbreaker. I lost these two games. Then we switched to Commander and I won 3 games in a row. And a fourth game, I drew a card. Maybe my friend read my face. I was going to win again just with that card. And my friend was like, you better not win this fucking game too. And I was like, oh, and he was like, you won the first 3 games. And I was like, oh yeah. And then I ended up not winning that game on purpose. Because yeah, I could have played with that one card. It was my win con. I ended up not playing it and ended up losing. I think they took me out like 2 or 3 turns later. But yeah, back to my AC being removed like 3 times in a row. There's 2 ways to see this. It's my fault that my deck revolves too much around my commander, right? You shouldn't build decks that revolve, that your win con is your commander. And if you don't have your commander, the deck doesn't work. That's something that I've learned. 2, I shouldn't have expected people to be nice to me and let me play a bit, especially if they've each won a game. Like, they don't have to let me win the 3rd game, but we're playing with friends. I think that's kind of my rule 0 is everybody should have their time to shine, not necessarily in a game. Well, at least in a game, but at least in the night. So if you see that I've been overpowered the first 2 games, so for the last 2 hours, I've just been sitting and getting beat up because my decks couldn't keep up with their decks. And then I play my best deck because I want to compete, and you just shut me down the whole time, specifically me. Then yeah, I'll be a bit salty about it. And I think I can't say that it's unfair because that's how the game works, right? There's nothing in the rules against doing that. But it doesn't necessarily make me want to play with you again if winning is the most important thing for you out of this evening, then I don't think that we should play together, because for me it's more about having fun, making my deck do the thing. I don't care if I win as long as my deck did the thing. If my deck didn't do the thing the whole night because you shut it down, then yes, bravo, your deck works really well. You're a very smart commander player, but I didn't have fun. If I'm not having fun, why would I play with you again? Which over time is what happened, and our group kind of splintered into factions of like very competitive guys and more janky guys. And yeah, I think that's fair. That's what happens over time, right? Yeah, touching the commanders, stealing a commander and not letting them have it, for having access to it for the entirety of the game, that's a whole other thing that I think should be a no. You build a deck that steals other commanders for the entire game. Okay, you did it. Super cool. I'm never playing against that deck again. I want to see it in action. I'm impressed, but I don't want to be part of that. Now, is it fair? It's legal in Commander, right? I don't know if I'm expressing myself well enough. It's removing the ability for other players to do what they came to the table to do, which is a strategy, but it's not fun. Interacting with neutral players.
A knife!
No! The next rule is
Like, they were talking about being entertaining at this show. I wonder if they have a extra ban list. If you're like a fan and you come on their show, or not even a fan, if you're just allowed on their show, if they have like certain games, like certain cards like Armageddon, like, by the way, we don't let this card being played on our show because we want to make a fun show. I'd be curious about their list. I'd love to see their list. Maybe they don't want to release it because they don't want to influence the game too much. It would be like a Matt Mercer effect in D&D, maybe. Okay, this game, this rule, interacting with neutral players. That's interesting because my decks are built a lot. If we play two players, I very rarely win. I think it happened once. 2-on-2 commander. 3-player commander, I very rarely win as well, because my decks are built for me to kind of, they're slow so that people fight each other at this. I take into account that there's 3 other players and they're going to be busy with each other.
Not interact with neutral plays like neutral
Plays, not neutral players.
Like, have you ever had your ramp spell countered?
Yes.
By a control player who was maybe learning the ropes. Like, that's understandable. Like, okay, strategically, maybe don't counter ramp spells. But socially, not countering ramp spells is...
I had we were playing...
I think it's totally fair. I think I've had my Soul Ring countered at very early or stolen, and I think it's completely fair. It doesn't take you out of the game. It keeps you at our level.
Against precons, when I was playing a budget deck to play against the precons, and somebody abraded my locket. And I was like, okay.
What the?
Okay.
Sure.
Sir. And it felt like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And this is clearly a player who's new to Commander and it's just like, I have a removal spell, I'm just going to spend it. And that's an okay way for them to spend it.
Yeah.
But it definitely, like, the Commander and player in me came out and was like, what?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
I think
if you didn't
That's weird. That's totally fair for me.
deny my ramp spells, I understand because I'm ramping to something.
Yeah.
If I get to Morophon and Morophon meets the eye, the Transformers are rolling out.
Stop it. I'm ramping to something.
Yeah.
The deck is ramping faster than it's melting.
Yeah, I agree with it. Why would you let them do it? Players who are behind.
I think, reaction to that kind of thing. The next one is going to be how you deal with players who fall behind.
The rubber
And
band
the-
Depends.
mechanic.
Yep. Because a lot of people are going to be like, hey, don't mess with me. I'm not the threat.
I will never say that. I will accept goodwill, but I'll never be like, you guys, I missed my land drop because I kept a bad hand.
That happens a lot at tables for me, personal experience.
That's my fault.
Yep.
Or I made an enemy of Murph and he killed my bounce land.
Especially early when, like, if one person has like a 2/2 ready to swing, that gets a trigger on attack or on dealing commander damage, and you're the one with no defense, and they attack you, and you're like, well, I'm at 36, they're at 40. Yeah, but you're open. Like, what did you expect?
To be fair, sometimes that does happen. Sometimes you are behind. But the problem is that the threats is so subjective. And somebody saying, oh, well, I'm not the threat. Like that, I've done that in games with you, Rachel.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just behind. I'm not the threat. You all out there have seen games with Rachel where she's not the threat.
I'm
and
trying to hide.
tries to hide.
Don't hit
For
me, I'm
I'm doing
hiding.
good.
Rachel and Josh both do this a lot.
Yes.
And
Oh, I'm
so-
doing so bad. I don't have anything. I'll just draw 5 cards and
Yeah.
make it 5 dudes. That's all I can do.
At the same time, don't do it just to spite somebody. But if you legitimately feel like that is in your best interest to winning the game, is to keep this person
Yes.
down or try to attack this person, whatever it might be, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, look at Lost Cabins of Ixalan. Prof
Yeah.
knew that Josh might look like he's behind.
But he's
Especially if someone was up and the table took them down and now they're not out of the game, but they can't do anything anymore. I don't feel bad about taking them out completely. Sometimes there's a bigger threat, so you have to switch targets. I guess it depends on the player mentality and strategy, because we have a guy at our table that he'll focus on one person, even if you're not the threat at all or anymore, and he'll take you out. And he says, no, it's better for me to take this person out while they're vulnerable, and it's their problem if their deck didn't help them survive this. My mentality is, no, that person being still at the table is one more target besides me first. So if other people target them instead of me, that's my advantage. 2, that person could help me against other people. I used to hate politicking. Now I love it. And this is kind of my mentality for most of my decks as of now recording this video, is try to keep other people alive, because they can kill you, but they can also help you fight the bigger threat. If I'm the bigger threat at the table, I'll try to take out that player because I know they're coming after me. But if I'm number 2, I'm going to try to keep them alive. And I've done this a few times, annoying the shit out of other people, where somebody's swooping in for the kill. That guy was playing a Voltron and was about to take out the third player, and I bounced their Voltron commander, keeping that person alive for one more turn, and that person turned around and killed the Voltron commander, and then I could win. So I think that was totally fair play. That person was so annoyed, the Voltron guy. It's funny because I'm using 2 players the whole time. All these examples that I've given is just 2 players in my commander life. They're 2 players that kind of embody everything I want to say about the 2 different mentalities that are not my mentalities of building decks and playing commander. It's interesting, the different mentalities. And it's interesting how annoyed they are when I do something unexpected. I love doing the unexpected stuff. I love being the chaos guy.
But you still got to target him.
Get
Yeah,
him.
exactly.
This is my worst habit in Commander. This is where I get the saltiest, is when I feel like I would do something different and somebody does, and like somebody points it at me.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I feel like I would behave differently and you're affecting me that way.
But you're not them, they're not you. They have a different idea of the game.
The problem is you do not have the information that the person has.
That's the thing.
Right.
Yes.
Is
Right.
I need to
Like-
get out of my own noggin.
I'm going to kill
and
this
remember-
person.
That's the most interesting point of all this video, I think, of what she's saying right here.
The blight steal, and I might have a different plan
Yeah.
for you.
I think a lot of Commander players are going to be like, commander players have terrible threat assessment or commander players have it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't like
Yeah, maybe it is wrong with threat assessment.
it might be, but it's their removal spell and they get to spend it how they want.
I want you to keep talking. Honestly, like, if you're going to talk crap about my place, like, keep going. Because if I win, this is going to be really sweet.
Yeah.
What's annoying me is when you want to cast a spell and the other person goes, "That's not the correct move." Also, the thing I hate the most is if you do that to me, then I'll do that to you. I've encountered that a lot when I was playing in Vietnam with non-Vietnamese players. Curiously, Vietnamese players rarely said that to me, but Westerners said that to me a lot. Like, if you do that to me, then I'll do that to you after. It's like, well, if you think that's the play, then that's the play. And I fucking hate when somebody just plays unstrategically just to get back at you. And then other players, they're not scared of you. Like, oh, if I do that, they're going to get back to me. They're just seeing that you're focusing on me and then they have more freedom. It's such one of the saltiest, I don't want to say dumbest, but most emotional, unlogical thing you can do in a game is somebody removes your creature and then you just want to take him out of the game and like, I don't even want to win anymore. I just want to take you out. Like, that's not fun to hear for the person.
It's going to be really embarrassing for you.
So I
It
think
doesn't come up much. But
I think the players who are behind thing is one of those things where like when you're behind, you're still in the game because we've all been in Commander games where one player gets left alone because they got behind early and they come back and win the game because they have not been interrupted in any way.
Yeah. We're all aiming for that awesome story. And if these two people killed each other to death and then person 3 just wins by default. I don't know that that's a great story.
Yeah, I think this is interesting, and I think this is one that Commander players need to adjust to. But there is going to be a feeling that when a player is behind, they are given the benefit of the doubt. Often, if somebody misses a number of land drops, players will be like, tutor a land to the top.
Yeah,
just put a land on top.
That. I love saying, let's abundance a land. We're all okay with that, right?
I don't get that part. I was thinking about something else. Do the thing. Should these rules be written? Are these rules really rules? To the listeners. Let's see what they say to the listeners. I'm just going to skip ahead because this video is getting long.
Also has a Discord that's a great resource for exactly that. We'll have a link in the show notes.
Yep.
To the listeners, what unwritten rules have you seen in Commander in your area?
Okay, that's okay. All right. Great video, I think. This is the channel. Sorry, I'm getting a blank. The Command Zone. Link in the description below. I love watching their videos. These guys have very good editing. They have cool guests. They have cool decks. They make interesting stories. It's usually no salt, very friendly. Very interesting. Tell me if you agree with me in the comments. If you have other unwritten rules, just like they're saying now in their video, I'm interested in your thoughts. Maybe this is something we can share at the table. Stuff like, have you banned Sol Ring at your table? Are there any decks that you're not allowed to play anymore or that you've taken out of your own collection just because it brought too much salt? What's your worst story? What's your best story? These are kind of things that I'm interested in hearing as well. Well, thank you very much for watching. That's it. If you enjoyed this, you can follow this channel, subscribe, whatever, comment and like is always the best stuff. I also stream on Twitch, Salt Goblinoid, link in the description as well. I don't stream Magic at the moment. I don't have the money or the room to like do a rig for gameplay, but I would love to do that someday. If you have a channel in Quebec and you want to invite me to play, I would love to do that. But for now, this has been Salt Goblin, bringing more salt at your goblins. I don't know. Thank you for watching, guys. Bye.